Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be taking a look at a Roach Forest deck. This deck is pretty okay. I am not the best Roach Forest player. That's definitely a problem for me. But overall it performs fairly well. It's relatively cheap. We're just running 2 Aria in this build. There is even budget builds where you don't run any at all, and we'll probably cover one of those in another future video. And there's some other optimized builds that I want to look at in the future too, because I don't think this is all there. This is just kind of something that I found that looked pretty solid and then adapted slightly, just messing with Aria and messing around. So hope you guys enjoy it and we'll get right into it. Alright, our first match here is against Rune. This deck likes to go fast, so the idea is to spam the board with as many little things as you can pretty early on without wasting too many cards, because you obviously want to keep cards for those Roach and combo procs. Taking advantage of the turns where you can swing once or twice with Roach. There is some nice setups for being able to Roach twice on turn 6. Although that's a little rougher, you need to draw pretty well to do that. You want to have both cards that can be decreased to 0 and things like that, which is a bit of a pain to get your hands on pretty early. So we end up just dropping as many of these fairies as we can, get the May Journey Elf out to kill off the 2/2 for free basically, and then hit them for 1. Like I said, you want to get as much little chip damage in as you can early, build up those fairies as much as you kind of can, and just hit them over and over and over again until you get them to about 10 or 12 health, where they do become within a Roach range. That's about where you're able to kill them from. I found any more than that, and it's hard to trigger enough cards for Roach to really be valuable, but around that 10 to 12 health mark is roughly where you can pretty easily take them out. So they do start clearing a lot of my fairies here, but not quite all of them. So we do end up getting at least a couple left on board, and now we do have the Bale, which is the card that allows us to decrease it to 0. This other gold here, Glade, really nice. You're able to draw 2 cards, and then with the Evo, able to pop a board. It basically splits up all the cards in your hand for 1 damage each, and then just hits every card on the board for, you know, split up damage. It's not a perfect clear, but it's a good enough job. It's good single target. It's pretty decent on 2 to 3 followers. Once you get over that, then you can start having trouble if you don't have enough cards in hand to cover their health total. So we end up going for the fairies here. We end up going for the Journey Elf as well. Just throwing some more fairies. Getting the full clear that we wanted. And trying to set us up for that Roach play. We're very, very close at this point to being able to use the Roach play. So they do some more draws and they don't do a lot else. Unfortunately, since we do have a full board here, there's not a lot we can do. So we go for the Evo just to get that damage in now. So that next turn, Roach is live. They are going to be basically forced to clear here, because now we are threatening a pretty nasty lethal just on board, which will open up the space we needed for Roach. And with that, we actually have an easy lethal here, so we can easily play the Bale, which does do 4 damage when it is played. And then we can go for the Fairy, just generating cards here, and then double Roach for lethal. Which, thanks to Evo, we had way more than enough there. Alright, and next up, we're going up against Dragon. This is actually a matchup that I've found to not be too much trouble overall. If I had to pick any class where I'm like, Forest is pretty good against, Dragon seems to be it.
This brings me back.
I do end up with a pretty weird hand. It's a weird one to hold here, but the Fairy Converter kind of makes it for me. I'm able to at least get some value out of those early. So we can go for the double Fairy play, or we can go for the Fairy Tamer we just drew. Fairy Tamer's probably better here, just because then I can open up the May play if I want to. Pretty nicely. I mean, we could have done that anyway, honestly. And now we can just go more fairies. So I just fill the board with as much as we can and start hitting face. We want these things removed because we want the Bales to go down to 0, ideally. Bale. Godwood Staff is our really nice amulet. This thing actually allows us to draw more cards at the end of each turn when we do combo 3. And then when engaged, we get to return a card from the field to the hand, which enables you to do some pretty nice things with Roach. Being able to duplicate 1 Roach, basically, for 2 hits. or potentially return other cards to hand that would otherwise have either clogged your board or allow you to just push that one extra damage you might need with Roach. And since it is an amulet, it can just kind of stick to the board, which means you can just hold it in your back pocket for quite a while. So I go for the clear here. I probably could have done that. No, maybe not, because I couldn't play the Mei without removing a card anyway, and I don't want to use up my staff just to play Mei. So from here, we only really need one more card returned to get the Bales down to 0. But we don't end up finding it yet, but that is a really nice pickup. We can easily just throw an Evo to this, clear board, and then hit them in the face for 1. We're also threatening with a 5/5. And we're pretty much sitting on lethal with Roach nearly at this point. We're pretty close, I think. So from here, it's just a little bit of Roach math to work out what we're going to be able to do. They do end up leaving our 1/1 up, which is more than fine. So I go for the Bale. We take them out with double Bale, get rid of their ward. I unfortunately would need to free up a spot here, so I end up just sacking the fairy and playing the Mei. Then we get to Roach for 4, and then we get to return Roach, and we get to play it again. That's why Godwood stuff is quite nice. And then we can easily go for the Evo here, and we're actually 1 over lethal anyway. So even without the Mei play, we would have been fine. So as you've probably seen at this point, this deck is relatively fast, so slower matches like Haven and Dragon tend to be the better matches. When you're going against something like Sword, you need a little bit of a better hand. You want some of that ping amulet that we had earlier. That's quite good. You want to be able to fill the board faster than they can, and while also removing them for basically free. So they just go for a Serenity here. We can just go for another Fairy. The 1-drop spell is really nice. It can also be quite nice to use on its own. If you don't use them early to flood board, you can always use them later game to just fill your hand with some fairies and then spam them out. Unfortunately, we haven't got to actually see Arya here. That's why I'm thinking cutting Arya altogether isn't actually a bad option at all. That's why budget forest decks can actually do pretty well. So I decided to just kind of go for it here. Flood the board a little bit. Get some damage in. We're just going to play a super aggressive playstyle here if Haven's going to play on the slower side. Which worked out really well, actually. We managed to retain our 2/1, which is great. And then we can easily just drop some fairies. We can drop the Bellringer. We can even Evo this and go 4 to face. Getting 4 more damage, getting us just a little bit closer to putting them in a Roach range. Grasshopper is an interesting one too. If you can't find your Roaches or something, you can actually use Grasshopper pretty well for it. You just play 2 cards and Grasshopper. And that will automatically draw you a Roach. But we end up finding Arya and Roach in this game. So we're actually in a pretty nice spot. But I end up just using Grasshopper to find a second Roach anyway, just so we can have that extra Roach. And then I decide to just clear their ward, leave the board empty, set our Bale up, why not? Double dose of healing. Yeah, not really too threatening here. We get to Arya for pretty much free, which is nice. We can super evolve it as well. They are going to just nuke it with the amulets, but I'm okay with that if it means I can get the extra face damage off the fairies while setting up potential lethal next turn. Because between Bale, fairies, and Roaches, we've actually got a pretty nice upcoming board, along with our Super Evo. They do end up healing a bit though, so I was concerned that I wasn't going to be able to get there. But we end up just sending it. We go for a single Roach play. Just one for now. Since I have Bug Alert, I get to return the Roach. Bug Alert is our 1-cost return spell. That does put them in a pretty close lethal range now, but we do still have to deal with this ward. The only kind of bonus here is that Bale sticks, which forces them to attack, meaning I can just run them over with a single fairy card. But since they did heal, I do kind of need to get some more damage again. I can't really afford to not get the damage in. We want, like I said, we want them at like 10, 12 health max range before we go to lethal. If I did some math there, maybe we could have made it work, but I just didn't want to even take the chance. My Roach skills are just not that good. By far, Forest is probably one of the weakest classes for me when I play it, because I'm just not that experienced with it. So I end up just sending the 2 Roaches here. I think we ended up with more than enough, even with the Bellringer clear here. Because Super Evolve gives us a +3, which is way more than enough.
Well, I tried.
So after those games, looking back on it, Aria is definitely like probably the least useful card as far as out of all the cards in this deck that I'm not a big fan of. I don't know. Like, maybe as a one-of I could see it, maybe not even. Like I said, Budget Forest does very, very well. I will have to look into some more Forest decks, see how they go. There are some crazy players. I know a lot of the big Japanese players, the Rage players, they are doing very well with Forest at the moment. I think this is one of the top win decks as far as things go, Forestcraft. In particular, I think it's a mid-range Roach build that does exceptionally well. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I hope you'll stick around for another video next time. Until then, see ya.